Hey everybody, one thing I really like about Alpha Centauri is that you can go for some really unique and distinctive builds. And looking at the list of buildings in the game, I realized that a lot of the things align here to make a strategy where you have labs at 0% be potentially really strong. So I played some games, let me show you what I came up with. First of all, I will say that I tested this on Transcend difficulty, so this is not just a novelty, it is actually a very strong strat. I also used the Thinker mod, and I would recommend that you do the same. It makes the game much more satisfying. The AI isn't cripplingly dumb. It also makes the game much harder, but it has some quality of life features relating to hurry production. It will calculate the partial rush that saves you the most gold while finishing next turn. It also removes the mechanic where rushing is double cost if you don't already have 10 minerals in the box. We'll be doing a lot of hurry production today, so this will be quite handy. First, let's talk about facilities. Obviously, we can skip the science buildings because we're aiming for 0% science, but we can also skip the happiness buildings, and this is the key right here. Punishment spheres. Basically, they permanently nerve staple your city when you build them. And if we build them in all of our cities, these cities can just grow forever. We want to use tree farms too, because this series of buildings is just very strong, but it also gives a bonus to commerce, which has good synergy with our build. Next, in regard to technology, there are a lot of ways for us to get technology for free or for cheap. Most notably, probes and trading. We will be at parity or behind the AI for most of the game. That is not great, but the benefits will pay off. This build will produce a ton of gold, which we can spend how we want, but because we're not tied down having to do happiness and science buildings in the mid-game, we'll save a ton of minerals too. We can use these minerals on our army, on expansion, on probes, but also to grab secret projects if you're into that. Just be aware that because of the tech restrictions, we'll have limited control over what secret projects we get. More on that later. Let's talk about social engineering. But before we get to the exciting part, I'll say I'm noticing there's almost no Alpha Centauri guides on YouTube, despite it being a quite popular game. I'm a Civ 3 channel, but if you want me to be that guy, a subscription would get the message through loud and clear. Social engineering, we're going to break down each of the values. Economy, very important. +2 is the specific breakpoint that you want to hit because it gives you +1 energy per square in your empire. Efficiency. Reduced unhappiness is good early, and in cities that don't have the punishment spheres yet. And less corruption means more energy, which is of course great. But the key thing here is that if we hit +4 efficiency, we get a paradigm economy. This means we can set our sliders however we want without losing yields. Science for us will be at 0%, so +4 efficiency is absolutely critical. And the other benefits are nice too. Support. This is good, especially early game, but it is not essential. Morale. This is good to have, especially in the mid game when we're going to be fighting some wars because we're trying to steal techs. But weirdly, the way we're going to run combat here means that we can work with a low morale score if we need to. Police. Late game, this doesn't matter much. We won't have unhappiness at all in our core cities. Early game, it helps a lot though. Remember, if we can, we want to avoid constructing happiness buildings since they are useless once we get punishment spheres. Early military police can help bridge that gap until you get those online. Growth. Early game, again, we won't have much happiness, so it's not needed then. Mid to late game, it's solid. It would be nice to have the option to pop boom, which requires 4 growth plus a children's crash. Planet doesn't really seem that important to me. Probe. This one is deceptive. You might think that this is the most important one, but the skill of our probes is not the barrier to winning with this strategy. The barrier is being able to set up the probes so that they can actually get into the city, and we want to not die from the wars that come from espionage. So probe score is solid, but if needed, we could drop it. Industry. This doesn't make you produce more minerals, it makes things cost less minerals. This is a crucial difference because it makes things cheaper to buy too. Do not sleep on industry, it is really important. Research. Obviously, we don't care about research. It's mostly useless, but it does help us come online early at the start, and you can also use it to close out in the very late game. So, our big 3 are industry, economy, and efficiency. Who are our candidates for factions to play? Mariam doesn't offer too much. She can have an explosive expansion phase with all her support, but she's reliant on trading techs, otherwise it's painfully slow for her to come online. She can fight, but she doesn't really get any boosts to her economy. I think that there are better ways to play her. Daedra is a great faction. Her efficiency score is tempting here. She can run Fundamentalist while still hitting +4 efficiency, but she cannot run Free Market, so this means she can never hit that +2 econ breakpoint, at least not before the future civics. She's extremely strong, but I think a more generalist build is good for her. If we're going for this hyper-specialized one, we're going to choose a different faction. Let's see the top 3. The Data Angels are next. Now, I haven't played them yet, so feel free to go and prove me wrong if you disagree with this, but my instinct is that they are okay for this strat, but not ideal. Low police hurts their expansion phase. They do have a fallback that if they infiltrate 3 other factions, they can get a bunch of free techs, but they do need to be near 3 other factions for that. The potential payoff of minus 25% to probe actions could really help buying cities, but I'd rather just have a bigger economy. And the Angels cannot get +4 efficiency while also getting +2 econ. They have to choose between green and free market when it comes to their civics, their social engineering. Number 2 is the free drones. When you look at their stats, this might seem like an obvious choice. +2 to industry is insane at all phases of the game. -2 research does slow you down early, but then it becomes irrelevant. -1 drones per base is an insane boost to the early game. But the catch is that they can't hit +4 efficiency. This is a 20% cut to their late game economy. Or if they choose the green civic, their economy is at +0, and it has a similar effect. This is undoubtedly a great faction for the strat, and using it can run people over very quickly. The reduced economy isn't as bad as it seems, because the things that they buy are cheaper due to their industry score. If you're getting used to playing on Transcend difficulty, give them a shot. I think they're much more forgiving to pilot, and they're probably the most consistent option for this strat. But there's one other pick who offers more explosive highs. You guessed it, the man, the myth, the legend, Nwabuda K. Morgan, CEO, Morgan Enterprises. He's the only faction that can do +2 econ and +4 efficiency without using the Future Society social engineering options. He uses green economics and the wealth value, which gives him some industry too. He doesn't need to run free market, and so he avoids the downsides of free market as well. So how do our playthroughs go? We're going to want to play a standard size map. Be careful early on. You have reduced support, so each base only gets 1 free unit. Be careful where you construct units from. You do still want to scout to meet other factions, kill worms for credits, and get free stuff from around the map, but make sure your scouting is productive. You pay minerals on most of your units. If it's not yielding anything, disband it or return it home. Spend your gold often. Use the Thinkermod's partial rush feature. Keep in mind that you purchase units at a less efficient rate than buildings. Early in the game, the difference isn't that much, but it scales as time goes by. So, given the choice, buy buildings. As Morgan, you start with 100 gold. Use it soon. I especially like to buy recycling tanks ASAP. You do not pay maintenance on them. Colony pods are great too. You want to keep population down to avoid unhappiness. Keep a unit in each city as soon as needed for military police. In a pinch, you can buy a scout patrol. Use scout patrols, do not use synth metal garrisons. Unless I'm mistaken, they aren't any better against psi attacks, which is most of what you're going to be dealing with early. Be careful with formers. Obviously you want to improve your land, but these guys will cost maintenance, and this can shut down your base if you run out of minerals. Often, high food tiles are a trap. Your city grows, and you have nowhere to assign the citizens, and then you start to need doctors to deal with the unhappiness. I would say buy formers in cases where you can immediately improve the minerals generated from a base. Otherwise, do recycling tanks into colony pod first. In the long run, you want to be planting forests. Keep that in mind. But often your first jobs will be improving mineral, nutrient, or energy bonus tiles. Constantly trade techs whenever possible. Give in to AI demands. You need good relations with them. Secure city spots and land ASAP. Once you have a decent number of cities down, you'll start to have growing pains, unhappiness from inefficiency. Power through it. Use the psych slider if necessary. I'd recommend getting recreation commons in your 3 biggest cities, and for the rest of the cities, just keep the population low. You can also use nerve stapling. You're still teching at this point, so it will slow you down a bit, and it is an atrocity. I didn't mess with it for that reason when I was doing these playthroughs, but it could be quite useful early on. Once you have 6 or so cities down, I'd say your capital should start building the merchant exchange wonder, especially if you got an alien artifact to speed it up. Make sure to do rec commons first, though, so that your cap can get to 4 population without happiness issues. When the wonder is halfway done, you should pick one secondary city, build a command center, and spam rovers, just so you can get a good start on building up your army. By the time the merchant exchange is done, you should be at the point where you can build hab complexes and supply crawlers. Low pop cities that are dealing with unhappiness can use the supply crawlers to boost their production in the meantime. Continue spamming cities. Try to get cities in places where it would be easy to steal the enemy's techs. Water bases help a lot with that, especially if you can get one near the university faction. They have reduced probes, so it's easy to steal from them. In social engineering, switch to wealth, green, and democratic as soon as you have their respective tech. I would recommend staying out of the free market civic. At this phase, things might be getting rough, but try to walk the tightrope. You might need to start stealing techs, even if it means a war breaks out, but be careful. As a rule, do not be at war with two players who you share land borders with. These are defensive wars. Choose the setup well. Ideally, you'd want a roaded, rocky path next to your city in a way such that you can spy them immediately, but that they have to pass a turn next to your city before they can hit you. Get perimeter defenses and sensor towers in border towns. Do not be caught with your pants down. If you have all the social engineering techs, the last thing you need to be fully online is the tech for punishment spheres. Once you have that, you're good to go. Set the tech slider at 0%. I would sue for peace if possible. Use as much gold as you can to accelerate your build. Tree farms, children's creche, energy banks, eventually fusion labs even will give you money, and of course the tree farm series of buildings. Dump all the money you have back into buildings, but stay safe. You need a defensive setup where you can defend yourself without expending too many resources to fight. You want to be using the gold to rush buildings in your core cities. By late game, you can even turn your tech back on. Despite being cut in half, if you have +2 economy, +4 efficiency, and a ton of cities, you can tech every 2 or 3 turns. I thought maybe I'd want to sell the punishment sphere and then use the psych slider, but that wasn't needed. You can just tech with the punishment sphere on. A note on secret projects. Keep in mind that in Alpha Centauri, you can stockpile shields forever, so pre-builds aren't an issue. So I like to stockpile shields in my capital. When I get the pop-up that the enemy is doing a wonder, I steal their techs and I nab the wonder from them, maybe using hurry production to pay for the wonder, or you can take the supply crawlers from around your capital and put them in for the extra shields there. This has led to me getting some random stuff that I normally wouldn't opt for. Any project that gives bonuses to science or happiness is likely not needed. Something like the planetary energy grid seems like a godsend, seems like it would be perfect, but in reality, on Transcend difficulty, it just comes at an awkward spot, and you can't really get it. Instead, you get things like the Citizens Defense Force or the Xeno Empathy Dome. Random stuff, but anything helps. So that's all. Let me know what you think of this strat in the comments, and let me know if you have any crazy strategies in Alpha Centauri that actually kind of work. Cheers.